Says we are live.
I'm not sure that's true. Let's see.
It's about a 6-second delay, I think, that
Oh, here we
YouTube
go.
pops in there.
There we are. Okay.
Says we are live.
Adjusting the structure. Let's see.
It's about a
You might need one more
6-second
book.
delay, I think. Okay. Pops in there.
There we are. Yeah, there we go. It's not fabulous, but it's not terrible.
Cool.
It's not grainy. It's just not the best.
Let's do this.
There we go. It's not fabulous, but.
Are we flying solo right now, or we have company at the moment?
Hey, we've got some people. Kayla Carpenter. Hi, Kid Collector. All right. Oh, and I'm gonna mute this.
Yeah, mute that.
Sorry, guys. We're just getting organized here. We hope everyone's doing well. I'm a guest today on the channel instead of being on my own channel.
We're driving, so I'm going to be. I apologize too. This is my very first ever live stream, so
make sure you're looking
I'm
at the
trying to look in the right spot, not on my picture.
That is a classic rookie move.
But yeah, so first ever live stream. So apologies in advance if there's a little getting used to some things here. We're going to try to add some moderators as we go. Right now, Nicole is the only moderator that I set up in advance. So we'll see who the mix is that we get. And you know, if you see some of your folks, feel free to add those moderators. And as I see some folks that I recognize, and we'll get some of those things set up so we can keep any nasty and unwanted comments out of here. But yeah, so my name is Chris. This is Northgarden Comics, and wanted to have a chance to go live for the first time. And I don't like to fly solo, like to have company doing things. So thought I would solicit the help of a fellow collector of different things, but a collector nonetheless, a thrifter, DIYer, crafter, YouTube creator, woman extraordinaire, and my wife.
There we go, because that was a question. Yes, Kid Collector, we are married.
Yeah.
So we got married in 1997. How many years ago was that?
Almost 23.
Oof, that's a long time, friends. And I still like him a lot.
We both like each other.
You know, loving someone for a long time sometimes is easier than liking them. And I still really like him a lot. We have a good time together.
We got pretty lucky.
Yeah. So that's why we wanted to come on tonight. We wanted to talk about collecting.
Yeah.
And collecting as a couple. We collect different things, but collecting can kind of be similar. You know, like when you're a collector, I think you maybe have similar philosophies or whatever. So I thought I'd start off with a question. And of course, we want to be answering your questions too. Let's say hello. We've got Kayla, we've got Linda, Kid Collector, and Barbara. Hello to you all. Thanks for joining us. And so I wanted Chris to be able to have an opportunity to start talking about how he started collecting. So did you start collecting comics or did you start collecting because since I've known Chris, he's been a collector of Transformer toys and a collector of comic books. Those were like the two real main things that I knew. So which of those started first and how?
So and again, so a little more, it's kind of context here.
Oh, sorry. We have to say hi to Hi, Leanne. Leanne, is your hubby here? Because that'd be so fun if your hubby was here. She does vlogs with her friend, with her hubby.
And what you can do. Yeah. So this is also our maiden voyage on StreamYard, which I see a lot of fellow YouTube creators use. So one of the things, the way our relationship works is Nicole will like the benefits of technology, but doesn't want to have to learn it to begin with.
Very bad on the uptake of technology.
So we get real stereotypical when it comes to technology.
We do.
Remote controls, TV channels, DVDs, all those kind of things.
I can do a lot of things. I'm just not good at technology.
So part of my task was to learn StreamYard a little bit. And is Vintage Vinny here? I don't know if he will. We'll have to say hi to him when he gets here, and a special thank you to him because he did a video on how to put together a StreamYard specifically for a live show, but there's kind of some tips there that would apply to any live stream. But what was my point? My train of thought derailed. But collecting, we both collect things, but they're different, like Nicole said. And if you kind of imagine a Venn diagram, whereas I collect comics, Nicole collects vintage things. We'll get into some of the things that she collects. There's a huge overlap besides the specific things that we do collect that there's a lot of commonality. So things that we can share and learn from each other and appreciate about the way the other person collects. So for something for you, what you can do here.
Yeah.
See, this is our comments here.
Mm-hmm.
If you click on one, so you can say, there we go.
It's not letting me add moderators, so I don't think. Oh, am I not a moderator? No, now I am. Now it's showing up. It wasn't. But see, I can't put. I wanted Leanne to. Oh, maybe because she's not subscribed. I think you have to be subscribed to be able to be a moderator.
Okay. Well, we'll just have to be watchful.
Yeah. Okay.
But you can click on any of these comments to show them right there, and we can give everybody some,
All right.
some fun screen
time. Hi,
Anne-Marie.
Hi, everyone. Okay, so go ahead and start telling us how you started collecting. And then there is a good question about where we go to find both thrifted goods and comics. So, So we'll talk about that for next.
So how to start collecting. I would say I've been a collector since I was 12. So that's way back in the 1984 is when I can actually have documentation to show where it started. And for me, it was Transformers. I'm a Gen X kid of the 80s. Love the Transformers. We'd call it the Generation 1 franchise from that time. It was I would say first it was a cartoon that got me into the franchise, but then it quickly evolved into the toys. And my brother, Ryan, actually had the first toys of the Transformers. And I have vivid memories of seeing them laying for some reason in the laundry room floor. But anyway, they quickly became mine because I thought they were very cool and he didn't have a particular attachment to them. So it was the toys for a long time. And I pulled out in preparation for this. My mom brought home from, I guess it was a garage sale or something, brought home a Transformers comic book. And that was my first ever comic book. And I have it here. I pulled it out. It's this right here, Transformers. This is number 8. This is the first appearance of the Dinobots. You could tell, maybe guess that by the cover. That'd be something dinosaur related. You got Grimlock and Snarl and Slag there. But that was my first ever comic book. But for a long time, it was the toys, and then it evolved. It bridged over into comic books through Transformers, and that was really the kickoff. And I'll say that kind of how I collected, and I didn't, have this out of body experience where you look at yourself, get real meta about it, and think of yourself as a collector. You just knew what you liked and you collected it. Something else I pulled out, I saved everything, and for those of you who either collect. Hey, Bearded Comic Bro, nice, good to have you here. Bearded Comic Bro does some great things. He loves craft beers, which I share a passion for. He's got a great beard. He knows his comic trivia like nobody's business, and he's got a great channel. So definitely check him out if you're into comics and looking for other cool channels to subscribe to. But I saved everything.
Kid Collector wants to know your favorite comic book, and do you collect vintage comics?
I would say my favorite comic book, I don't have one. In my favorite anything, this is a question that has frustrated people who've asked me for decades. I don't have a favorite anything that I could really nail down. My favorites would probably be some of those firsts. Right? This Transformers 8, that's one of my favorites just because it's my first. It has sentimental value. The first comic I bought was Transformers number 35, and that has sentimental value. So I don't have, it's hard to say one favorite, and it's, they're all around me.
Kid Collector, do you collect toys or comic books or both? I'm just curious. I'm trying to read by your name. Like, what does that mean? What do you collect? I'm just curious. And I also wanted to ask you, do you have a favorite memory of finding a certain book?
A favorite memory of finding a certain book. I probably have several, but this is a favorite memory in the sense that I discovered that I had a comic book that I had no idea was valuable. For the comic book folks in here, I'm going to be doing more explaining than we might do on just a strictly comic book video because we've got a shared audience here. So, and I like people to know what the heck we're talking about.
True story.
But there are more significant issues of comics, and we would call those key comics. And usually it's the first appearance or some significant fight or event that takes place. Like in the 90s, you had the death of Superman or the breaking of Batman or any number of things, or a number one issue that is significant for some reason.
Right.
But there is a first appearance in comics of a character in DC called Harley Quinn, and her first appearance is very valuable. Now, I did not know. I can't even show it to you because it's being used to prop up our laptop right now. But 4 or so years ago, Nicole bought for me a book made by the Overstreet Price Guide. They do a price guide and other publications that tell you market value of comic books on a yearly basis. But they had one that tells you how to grade a comic book, and it's done on a scale of 1 to 10. And on the cover was the picture of this Batman Adventures comic book and Harley Quinn right on the cover, and it's her first appearance in comics. And I looked at that and I thought, I've got that comic, and had no idea at that point, even just 4 years ago, that it was significant. So I wasn't ever paying attention to keys, but that was a pretty cool find because it's one of the most valuable books I own, and I just happened to own it, and I bought it at cover price back in 1990, whatever that was. So that's a pretty cool.
All right, my favorite memory thus far recently of finding something, and for any of you who watch my channel, and for those of you who don't know my channel, I collected this certain kind of glassware. It's called jadeite. It's very hard to find. It's from like the 20s, 30s, and it's expensive. And I go to this place called the Goodwill outlet bins, where you basically thrift by the pound. Like you buy stuff and you pay by the pound. And I actually found these two salt and pepper shaker set. It was like my first jadeite that I ever found, and it was just sitting there in the bins, and I think I paid like $1 for them. So that was amazing. So that's probably my favorite thrifting memory of late.
And when would you say?
Well, let's get to that question first about thrifting and comic booking.
Oh, so where will you go to get the same?
Well, a lot of times we'll go to antique stores, and Chris hasn't had a ton of luck finding comic. I mean, there's always a lot of comic books at antique stores, but they generally are overpriced. Is basically what you've thought, right? Because
my two general experiences. So this is a blanket statement, obviously. So there's going to be many exceptions to this. Are that books that you tend to see in antique shops? One, they're generally in less. They're lesser quality. They're not really great quality condition comic books, and even the way they're stored in the antique shop is not necessarily the way you'd want to store them in life. Right. But then one of
not taking care of.
It's not taken care of the way it needs to be taken care of, and it may not be in great condition, even if it's relatively new. The other problem is I think that the mentality, generally speaking, tends to be that a comic book period is valuable, and that's just not the case. In fact, most comic books are not valuable, and we trace that back to the speculator market. Even before that, 70s, even as early as the 70s, early 80s, when collectors were really starting to hold on to things and take care of them. That and scarcity is what first drove the values up. Now you can get them anywhere, and there's still some huge value, but it's a very different world with the internet and speculation and things like that. But
so another thing we like to do is we will look at an area. So if there's a town we want to go to, or the kids need to go to for some reason, we will see if there's thrift stores and comic book stores in that town, or a Dollar Tree. I also like to go to Dollar Trees. So that's another way. Like if he has a comic book store he wants to go explore, I'll kind of tag along, and then I'll drop him off, and I will go thrift, and he can do his comic booking. And so we're kind of together, but in separate stores. And then we, but it's like adventuring. So we would love to like get an RV and take a road trip and just like make our way, like, I don't know, through the Midwest or something, hitting different towns with comic book stores and thrift stores. We think that would be amazing. So
something big enough to hold all the cool treasures we find. I have fantasies of picturing, long boxes of comics in the back of some vehicle that somebody wanted to sell me for a ridiculously low price.
Now, wait, there was a question that came in. So Linda G, I'm going to try to show your comment.
Just click on
it says, what is your comic Holy Grail? My husband's is Amazing Fantasy 15. Now, what is Amazing Fantasy 15?
Amazing Fantasy 15 is the first appearance of Peter Parker, a.k.a. Spider-Man. And I would say that would be, it may not be a realistic grail, but I would say that could qualify as a Holy Grail for most comic book collectors. Do I have a Holy Grail? I would say I would love to have one. I'd love to have any of the kind of traditional key books. One of the kind of foundational things or ways that I approach collecting is one of the things we wanted to talk about is you have to know not only what you want, but the condition you want to find it in and how much you're willing to pay for it. And as of right now, I've been collecting for the most part a little over 30 years now, and I've never spent more. I think the most I've ever spent on a book is maybe $15.
Right.
And in hindsight, even, I was impatient and didn't have to. I could have waited and found that long, for lower price later. But so I would love to have some of those, traditional Grail books. Right now, I would say, though, to not just, deflect the question or dodge the question, going back to that Transformers run from the 80s, it ran for 80 issues, and I had most of them from when they came out, or roughly, got some of them as back issues, but there were about 6, I think, that I did not pick up at the time, right in those last, handful of issues, and they were lower print runs. They're harder to find, and you usually have to pay more money for them.
Right.
I am now down to just 2 remaining issues.
Whoops, sorry.
And I'm down to just 2 of those issues to have the full 80 issue run. So those, I would say, those missing issues are probably some of the significant ones.
Okay.
But it's all about patience for me. Again,
Right.
know what you want, how much you want to spend for it, and then wait. It may take me 20 years to find those. But one of those cool earlier questions you asked was kind of favorite stories, like greatest things you found.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it closed, but there was a store here in Minnesota. It was only open for like a year, and it was called Epic Comics. And I ventured out. One time he was advertising a sale. It wasn't close to us, so it was a trek. But I drove out to his store, and he was doing a $1 sale on just about anything in the store. And I found 3 of the remaining 5 issues in that Transformers run that I needed for $1 a piece. They weren't in super pristine condition, but they were in fine condition, and they look great in a bag and a board. They present very well, and so I was super happy to find those. So.
All right, Vintage Vinny wants to know. Hi, Vintage Vinny. I added you as a moderator. He wants to know if you prefer the modern comic books or the older ones.
So, and first, Vinny, just to say thank you first.
Yes.
Shout
out to Vintage Vinny. Go ahead.
No, yeah, he did a video on how to prep for he was gearing it towards folks doing a live sale, but using the platform of StreamYard. And so, learned some of his tips and took some of those and put them into practice. So thanks, Vinny. The question, though, do I prefer modern books or the older ones? It's a mix. So there are definitely people who only read the old stuff. You go to comic shows, and there are people who walk around and they're just like, I don't like those modern books. The storytelling is crappy, and nothing's been good since the 80s or earlier. And then there's other folks who pretty much read the modern stuff. I do a mixture of both. So there are things that I get every month new, and then there are other things that are older. But when you say older ones, we go back to comics have been divided into ages. So the golden age of comics was first. That was starting in the 1930s, and you had, of course, your very first Superman and some of these other golden age heroes. And then after World War II and things settled down, different genres came into comic books. But then the next resurgence came with superheroes in the 60s, and that's the Silver Age. I would say if I were going to really target things as those really cool books to have, it'd be that Silver Age things. And then later, Golden Age, it's almost a whole different level of
so expensive
collecting,
too, right?
And very expensive, yeah. And you start to, when you talk Silver Age and forward, it's names that in pop culture today we're more familiar with, Marvel and DC and some of these other things. But you get to Golden Age, and even some of the publisher names were different, so it's a lot different. It's a different genre to learn, I guess.
Right. So. All right, so Smitty Smith wants to know if you're strictly a superhero type comic book collector.
Not strictly, but definitely the vast majority. Mm-hmm. I have a couple titles here and there that I've picked up that are not strictly superhero. I do like science fiction in general. I like fantasy, some other things, but superheroes, that's kind of my wheelhouse in terms of where I definitely gravitate towards. And some of that just comes from, there's definitely a strong sense of nostalgia when it comes to comic book collecting, because I started as a teenager and going on through. So those characters that I got to know then, like my favorites were Transformers and X-Men. And they're still some of my favorite characters today. But yeah, largely more superheroes.
So we thought it'd be interesting to talk about, because when you collect things, it's like, what is your philosophy? How do you rein your collection in? Because we know, as for the thrifters that are here, like your collections could really take over your house. Yeah. And I mean, we're sitting in Chris's comic book room, and his shelves are full. So I thought it'd be interesting to talk about, maybe ask you guys, like, if you're a collector, how do you rein in your collections. And for me as a thrifter, especially over like the lockdown, staying at home, like feeling like I'm surrounded by all my stuff, it gave me an opportunity to like really think about all my stuff and what I really want to hold on to, and you know, what I can let go. And so really trying to hone in. So like I like this other kind of glass, it's called milk glass, but there's all these different patterns, all these different kinds. And so, you know, I've decided like I'm just going to collect hobnail milk glass, and that kind of, so when I'm out in a thrift store, I know if I see other patterns, I'm either looking to buy it to resell it, or I'm just going to pass because it's not hobnail. So that's a way that I go about reining in my collection. So I'll pose the question to all of you out there, you know, like, do you have ways, like, is it certain characters on comic books? Is it certain books? Is it certain age of comic books? You know, or for the thrifters, you know, is it certain colors of things or types of things? Like, how do you control your collections? And Chris, how do you keep yourself from wanting to collect everything that's out there? I guess is the question. Because like you love, right? We joke. I'm like, I want all the vintage Santas, every single one. And like, that's not really possible because I would definitely take over my house. But, you know, like I do want them all, even though I can't have them all. So like, I imagine like you probably want a lot of comic books, maybe more than you possibly could have.
Definitely more than I could.
You know, how do you like decide? I guess is the question.
Well, I would say I'm learning some of that from Nicole, because my things, I'm just at the point where I'm hitting capacity on the space that this room has to offer me. And so I'm just starting to entertain those questions as I, you know, look around me at these boxes, to say, do I really want everything that I have? And the honest answer is no. Of course, I would say, you know, maybe you're not like this, but for us as collectors, you don't generally want to just get rid of stuff, right? Because you got it for a reason. I mean, it's something, you know, it's not always easy to let go of it, but that just frees up space for other things. So I've actually,
or you just buy a bigger house,
or buy a bigger house. I've started, and again, some of the inspiration for this came from Nicole, because one example, strawberries, right? Nicole was really loving to find decorative pieces that had strawberries on them, and she would use it in summertime decor. And you can find a lot of strawberry themed items.
More than I thought, more than I knew.
Yeah.
Because once you start looking for something, then you really start to see it. If that makes sense, you know, like I wasn't seeing it for a while, and then it was like,
and then so we started to get this proliferate. It was like we were living. It's like you could live in a strawberry patch, a virtual strawberry patch, and then it was something on the island or whatever. But it was just this one section. She goes, "Nope, this is going to be strawberries. I'm going to get rid of everything else and just going to keep these."
So I decided I'm just collecting, like, I think they're like jam jars. They come with jam bowls, I guess, slitted jam bowls or dishes, whatever, and they come with these little ceramic spoons. They're very cute. And then also strawberry pitchers. And that's then just a certain shape of object, a certain type of object. Everything else, I'm going to sell some of it at my live sale. I'm letting some of it go. I'm letting a lot of it go because I want things to feel special. Like if you let your collections get so big, then like the things you find mean less. You find that? You know? So that's why I decided, you know, like, rein it in, and like decide what really matters.
And what I've just started doing is going through, because I've done a lot of, I'm doing this kind of wave. It's always organizing. It's a never-ending challenge, but there's always organization happening. But one of the things I'm doing now is as I've been doing this latest round of organizing, I am identifying books and pulling them out as, you know, giveaway books. I'm not even looking at sell books yet, but just giveaway books that would then free up space in the boxes that I have to put in other things. And I got that from there's a guy out there. I don't know him personally. His name is Bill Bretall, Bretall, and he has the Guinness Book of World Records largest private collection. I don't know if he has
it's wild. Chris has shown me pictures.
But, you know, he's got well over 100,000 comic books, and he's been posting recently. I use an app to catalog my comic book collection. It's called CLZ Collector, and I have both the app for on my phone, which lets me to take my collection with me virtually, and my wish list as well, so that way I don't duplicate buy things. But then he's been going through it and loading his collection in and posting that on social media. And I was chatting with him about one thing, just asking him how he did something, and he mentioned how he had a giveaway box and just would put things into that. And I thought that's a great idea. So between Nicole paring down her strawberry collection and, you know, the way he's doing it, I say, you know, let me do that. Let me start to go through find things that I'm not attached to.
Yeah.
Because if I ask myself, is there something else I'd rather have?
Yeah.
Then probably. And then you start to swap it out. But I will say that collecting, and let us know if you think this way or differently. There are people who have goals in collecting, and then when they hit that point, the idea, I guess, is that they're done. Okay. But I see collecting as it's always evolving.
Well, it's a hobby.
There's always going to be more comic books to collect. There's always going to be something else.
And also, I feel like anything I own at any moment, I could get rid of. Like, I don't feel obligated to hold on to things just because I've collected it. Like, I think you should kind of always hold your collections a little loosely. This way, you're always free to kind of move on from them, you know? And so if you get tired of something, if there's something you're like, I really don't want to collect these anymore, then you can release them into the world and let someone else have them or give them or sell them, whatever it would be. Mm-hmm. And then you're like freeing yourself up. So I try to never hold anything too tightly and get too sentimental about things. It's like this. I just broke a picture frame tonight. And when it broke, I actually felt really free because I realized I was holding on to that picture frame. It was from our wedding. I never even really liked it. Like, someone gave it to us. It wasn't what I had chosen, but I settled for it. And I put our wedding picture in it. And then when it broke, I was like, I don't have to keep it anymore. Like, 23 years I held on to something that I didn't even like. I should not have held on to it that long. But anyway, all right. Wait, we missed a question. One was the Venom run one. Kid Collector had asked about the current Venom run. So just to give a little background, because I don't do a 1-minute answer there. Yeah. What is the Venom run for all those of us who don't know comic books?
Yeah, well, Venom is a character in the Marvel universe. He's a symbiote, which is, it's going to take a while to explain that. But to answer the question quickly, I actually don't follow Venom. Okay. There are a couple of them. Is that Marvel? That's Marvel. Okay. There are a couple of the really big characters that are very popular within Marvel today.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. Sorry, Anne-Marie likes my shirt. Remember when we could go to concerts? What a time that was in our lives. Right. We were just talking about that yesterday. Like, will we ever be able to go to concerts with like thousands of people again? I don't know. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just saw the comment.
But I will have to read some Venom at some point, just because I feel like it's my responsibility as a collector. But I don't collect any Venom, so I'm not super familiar. But on the theme of shirts, I'll share. Let me share my shirt. So this is my daughter, my number 2 daughter, Molly, gave me the shirt. This was for Father's Day. And it's the characters on here are in the style of Funko Pops, which is a collectible figure that you can get. And I don't collect Pops, but it is a Pop tee, and I am a Pop, and I wear tees, so I thought it was appropriate.
And by the way, she thrifted that shirt for him.
She did. This is from Goodwill, and it came with tags on it.
She got a good deal. Okay, so Vintage Vinny says, "Oh, that's a good idea." No, I don't think we have. Have we ever tried pawn shops for comic books?
I've never gone to a pawn shop, so I've never looked for comics or anything else. So we'd have to try that out.
Try that.
Do you know what I think?
I feel a little nervous about pawn shops.
Do you know where I think? So, pro tip. I don't know if I want to call myself a pro. A tip. Take it for what it is. Where to find good comics. So, 2 things let me say about philosophy on my approach to collecting comics. One is, don't judge how anybody collects, because everybody collects differently, right? And then 2 is never say never, because just because you don't think you'd like to collect something today, down the road you may see that you change your mind and maybe you do have an interest in that. I was only going to have 2, but the third one that I want to get to is being patient, because just about any comic book you want today, you could go online or to a store and you could find it, and you're going to pay some price for it. It may be a good price, it may not be, but you could get it.
Right.
The key, I think, though, is patience. Know what you want, how much you want to pay for it, and the condition you want to find it in, and then hold out for that. And so to that end, I would say one of the great ways you can find comic books is to look. It takes patience and it takes time, but garage sales, if you have flea markets in your area, check those out for sure. I miss flea markets. We're from the East Coast originally, and there were indoor flea markets that were year round, and great.
There are some flea markets in Minnesota, but not as many. But we are going to start going to some. They just recently opened up. There's a few that I want to take him to that I think he might be able to find some stuff, and I know I would find stuff. And Chris, do you only collect comic books, or do you collect other Marvel books? Good question from Linda Klein.
Because Linda, what do you mean by other? I would say it's mostly comic books.
He doesn't do like graphic novels or anything, right?
Well,
I guess when they bind.
Occasionally I'll get a graphic novel, but that's the only way to get it.
Okay.
So one of the things that publishers will do for comics is you get your single issues. Some people refer to them as floppies. Every 5 or 6 issues approximately, then the publisher will come out with what they call a trade paperback. And really commonly, you can see them in places like Barnes & Noble. I mean, they're everywhere, but Barnes & Noble is probably a really common store that people would see them in. And they're square bound. And like I said, they have anywhere from 4 to 6 issues in them, and you get them all collected together. And a lot of people will actually just collect those, or even bigger collections. Omnibus is one where you have an entire maybe creator's collection of their works in one binding. Right. Part of the adventure and part of the thrill of collecting for me is waiting and holding out and trying to put together those single issues. For example, I'm not going to be able to show you these. These are all on here. Somebody gave me a Daredevil story. Daredevil, you might know him from the Netflix TV series. He is a blind character who, he was blinded by some radioactive waste that he was affected with when he was saving the life of a pedestrian who was about to be hit by the truck, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, that radioactive material, in the comics, radioactive material is not so bad. It usually gives you superpowers. In real life, not so good. In comic books, it generally results in making you a superhero, or a supervillain.
Sorry, those are our dogs.
Yeah, our dogs are yipping upstairs. But Daredevil has been around for decades. Somebody gave me a graphic novel that had, I think it was about 6 issues, and it was called Daredevil Born Again. And I read it first as that graphic novel or that trade paperback, loved the story, and then I subsequently wanted to go hunt down the individual issues for that story, and I've been able to find them since.
So it seems like there's the story piece. So there's easier ways to get the story, right? You can read it online. You can get a bound edition with all of the books in there, and then there's the thrill of the hunt, which is finding the individual issues.
Exactly.
Okay, and you kind of do a little of both.
Definitely do a little both, yeah.
Because you do subscribe he reads a lot of comic books online.
Yeah, Marvel Unlimited I have, yeah.
Of finding the actual book.
Yeah.
Kid Collector says, it's hard for me not to buy everything because at my age I don't have a constant source of income, but when I get some money, those dollar books are my best friends. Don't get married and have children. Because then despite having income, your income is going other places.
I will say, Kid Collector, so this is where I was at the time, I think I wasn't one of the cool kids. I was in band, which I thought was cool, but generally speaking, I wouldn't be considered one of the cool kids, the popular kids. But I loved comic books. I was collecting Transformers toys, and one of the things I looked forward to when I was going to get my driver's license was being able to drive myself to Toys R Us to be able to hunt for Transformers toys. And I had fantasies of picturing that Toys R Us bag in the backseat of my car, and that was cool. So yeah, I get it. When you want to when you're limited on resources, yeah, the dollar books, and a lot of comic book stores even have dollar bins. I did some dollar bin diving today at a local store here called Issues Needed, and I picked up about 20 books, and I think he gave them to me for 75 cents a piece. So and some of them were pretty cool.
Yeah.
So,
and I think we both, because we're cheap and we like to have our money go farther, you can go on eBay and buy stuff. Pretty much you can get your hands on things. Yeah, right. I could go on eBay and buy a lot of things to add to my collection. But for me, it's not about having the thing, it's about the thrill of the hunt. So, and I think that's something we both share. We like, do you want to do that question before we move on?
Yep.
We both like the thrill of the hunt. So even though I could find things and I do occasionally buy stuff on eBay. And have you bought, I don't think you have. Have you ever bought something on
comic on eBay?
Yeah. No. But you have bought on occasion something more than $1 in a comic book store. On occasion.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'll if I get to $2, I'm like, ooh, you must really want that book, Chris. You spent $2 on it.
But for us, it's it's not about having the thing. It's more about finding it out in the wild.
That's part of the fun.
It's more of the fun. And that makes the hobby, there's meat to the hobby then. It kind of spreads it out because it's I might be looking for this thing for 4 years and that's okay with me, So, but Smitty Smith wants to know, do any of your children share your enjoyment of collecting comic books?
We were talking about this a little while ago. It's who of our kids are collectors? We have 4 children, 4 offspring.
They're not all children. They're mostly not children.
They're mostly not. They're older now.
Maddie's about to turn 21.
Kid Collector, I think you're probably roughly the age of our youngest. So, but our number 2 kid, Molly, she's a collector of sorts. She loves elephants, particularly plush stuffed elephants. and she has many of those.
Mm-hmm.
And then Gabe, our son, only boy in the family, he is definitely a collector. He would collect comic books with me. He's going to be 18 later this year. But, you know, from preteen days, we'd go to Free Comic Book Day, which happens on the first Saturday of May every year, except for 2020 when nothing is normal. But we would do that together, and he started reading, you know, Godzilla comic books, and he had definitely different tastes. So that was fun to see his tastes evolve. So he's got a couple, I'm pointing because his room's behind the camera here. He's got a couple what we call short boxes of, comic books in his room, but he is more of just a collector. So I think he likes the Funko Pops, so he's got some of those.
He lists uranium glass. He thinks my uranium glass.
He likes the uranium glass,
his, and he plans to take it with him when he moves or I die. I don't know.
Which is super cool because you shine the
like,
black light on it and it glows. It's fantastic.
Radioactive. See?
And still won't give you powers.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt you, but it doesn't give you any powers.
Glass, but it does glow and look really cool.
Yeah.
They just for anyone who doesn't know, uranium glass has uranium salts in it. They did that before they knew that it was radioactive, and so they did it for the nice green color. And then they found out that maybe that wasn't a good plan to put uranium salts in dishware.
You're gonna eat out of.
But they do say you can eat out of it safely. It's fine.
Yeah.
You're not really gonna.
And we
you
don't
get
eat
more
out of
radiation
it.
from your cell phone than you do from the uranium glass. But we like to collect it because it's really cool. I want to install black lights in the shelves that it's on so that it will always be glowing. And I like that collection because Gabe likes it too. Like the family likes it, so I just think it's kind of a cool thing to have. When the men are on board with one of my vintage glassware collections, I think that's pretty
the men
cool.
are on board.
Okay.
Because it's so cool to shine the black light.
And then Smitty Smith is adding to their last question. Is it based on what you like, or are you also looking for ones that are worth some money? Now, I feel like this has changed recently for you.
I learned by watching you.
That's right. So I have not done, I've sold things on eBay since when was September 11th, 2001? Wow. That left my brain for a second. I have been on eBay since 2001, selling stuff like, not having a resale business, but just selling things I would come across to have a little extra money or things that I got tired of, you know. So I have been reselling on eBay for a very, very long time. He hasn't historically done that. And I've picked up, since I've had my YouTube channel, I don't know, people I don't know, you see resellers on here. I'm like, oh, people are making some good money. Maybe I should do it a little more. Now, I still am not. I'm certainly a very part-time seller. But he has started in the last year selling things on eBay, right? But then also
sold a handful of things
finding things. Now he's kind of moving it a little further, wouldn't you say, where you're actually if he's at a garage sale and he sees something that he knows is worth some money and it's only 50 cents a book, you'll pick it up, right?
Yeah. So I think, and again, I learned it because Nicole's got a very good eye for things that have value in your realm that you deal with. You just know. And I am amazed at how many things she'll find when we go to the Goodwill bins and pay very low price and be able to turn a profit on it. And for me, I started doing it because what I'd like to do is get to the point where my hobby is self-sustaining, and so all of the money I spend on comic books comes from other comic books. And so I found there was a garage sale. I think my first real kind of venture into it was that 2 years ago? We went to a garage sale.
Yeah. No, I don't think that was last year.
Was that last year?
Yeah.
But it just said tools. You know, we're thinking, we're not going to find anything. But we pulled up, and this guy had 4 or 5 long boxes of comics, and they were all old comic books.
Yeah.
And I'm talking 1960s and early 70s kind of old. And I picked up, and everything was either 50 cents or $1, not in mint condition, but in mid-grade condition, and that's fine. For some of those really old things, mid-grade is just fine. But I found the first appearance of a character called Howard the Duck, and I have no attachment to Howard the Duck. And again, I don't remember if it was 50 cents or $1 that I paid for it, but I was able to sell that on eBay for $55. Whew. That's pretty crazy. And then I found a Godzilla #1. So I definitely, I do look now for wherever I am, even today included. I'm looking for things that I want in my personal collection, but I'm also looking for things that I could, ideally be able to sell just because then
we're
that's
each funding our hobby because we have an agreement that if we sell stuff online, that money is because the way we work, everyone does their finances differently, but the way we work it in our house is that we each get a little allowance for our kid collector. This is what I mean about being married. We get an allowance for our hobbies. And then if we sell stuff, that money is ours to keep. And so like mine is now a self-fulfilled, like it's a self-sustaining thing now, like, cause I'll buy stuff with my thrifting allowance and I'll be able to sell that stuff and then get more money to thrift with, you know, and so it's this sustaining thing. And so that's what he's, you know, trying to get more into, that reselling, so that he can kind of sustain his hobby and have more. Then you have more money. Like, it's like, okay, now you're not limited by your allowance every month, every paycheck. It's really per paycheck. You know, you have extra. So then it can become like now I pretty much thrift what I want. I mean, again, cause I'm cheap, I'm not going to go spend $100 on something, but you know, I pretty much thrift what I want because I know I can resell things. If I resell a few things a week, I've covered my costs. I'm still keeping some of the things that I want to keep. And then I have more money to go thrift other things that I want. So it's fun. It's fun that way.
But here's the challenge that I face. And if you are a comic person in the chat here or in the live stream, if I find a comic book that's a key and that I, in my mind, have the intention of selling it at some point, as soon as I own it, the challenge is now I have it. I just want to keep it. I don't want to sell it because that's a key comic book. And that first appearance, and I was at Kid Collector, greatest find at a garage sale or flea market. Probably, you know, as far as value goes, it was probably that first appearance of Howard the Duck. And then I got a Godzilla #1, you know, and some of those kind of things that were, you know, as far as value goes. But I was able to find at a garage sale. For those who know, you know, DC Comics, the Crisis on Infinite Earths was a 12-issue maxi series, they called it, back in 1985. And there were a couple key issues in there: Death of Supergirl, Death of Flash. And I had 11 of the 12 issues I picked up for $1 a piece. You know, so that was pretty significant. You know, it's amazing what you can find. I will say, we go to garage sales. We try to go every weekend, but we're always kind of scouting around for signs and using apps to find things. This year has not been as great. And most of the time, I don't find anything at just regular garage sales. Yeah. But when you do, so you can be surprised. Good. You can find some
now
good
he
stuff.
Started getting the courage to ask, because a lot of times when people like set out stuff for a garage sale, they're not thinking of those kinds of things. But there might be a box of comic books from their dad under a bed somewhere. So I'm like, it doesn't hurt to ask. You know, it's not an offensive question, but you can always ask, like, hey, you have any comic books you want to sell? So he's been starting to get a little more courageous when we go out yard sailing. But I want to answer Linda G's question. Do you have many 50-cent or dollar comics at the comic shops around you? I can get lost in those long boxes.
Agreed.
So how many comic book shops, local comic, would you say you visit on a regular basis that have those great, you know, the long boxes of like cheap comics? And would you say in the area, are there like a top 3 in the Minneapolis area?
In Twin Cities, you know, I haven't lived too many places, but compared to New Jersey, where I grew up, we have a lot of comic book stores. And so I feel real fortunate to have so many around me. We probably have, I'm just guessing, spitballing, close to, you know, 10. I would say around at least 10 local comic book stores. And some of them have multiple locations because they're chains. And of those, you know, and I'll just say names for anybody who's in Minnesota, or if you travel, there's a YouTuber, he's called Long Box Love Affair. And I started watching him, you know, I guess that was probably a couple years ago now, but he did a video one time when he was in the Minneapolis area for work, and he went to some of the local stores. But Issues Needed is in a city called Apple Valley. I was just there today, and they used to, when they were new, they're only a few years old, they focus mostly on newer things, and they've since started to buy some collections. And so they have, I would say, 20 long boxes of 99-cent comics. And like I said, I went there today and he gave them to me for 75 cents a piece. Nice. And it's a mix of older things, newer things. I was going to say, Mind's Eye Comics in, where's the AIM Center? Is that
Burnsville?
Burnsville? Because they moved. They're only like 2 years old.
These are all within like the metro.
All the Twin Cities metro. They just started to get some dollar bins. The two big places for finds here for those kind of cheap things. We have the chain Half Price Books in our area, and there are 6 Half Price Books locations in the Twin Cities. For those of you who are not familiar with them, they do basically just that. They sell books, comic books, magazines, vinyl records, DVDs, CDs, video games, board games, you know, all that kind of stuff for basically half retail price. And so their comics will all be $1 or $2 generally, and then they'll have some clearance things that'll either be 25 or 50 cents. So that's a good place to find them. And then for newer things, there's another local chain called Dreamers Vault, and they focus more on like competitive card games like Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, things like that. And they'll do Dungeons and Dragons, and they have, you know, areas set up with folding tables to do competitive tournaments. But they will sell only new comic books. But when they become overflow and they're just their back issues, they just sell them for half price. So you can get relatively, you know, things that came out 6 months ago for $2 instead of $4 or $5. Mm-hmm. So
Brian Schoonover said, got married, raised 4 daughters, stopped collecting for years, now back at it. I would say you kind of stopped for a little while, right?
Yeah, some of that's just budget, like finances.
We really did not have a lot of money when our children were little, and Chris was going to school, and then I was going to school. We just didn't have money for hobbies, and so I thrifted for clothes, like for sustenance, you know, like to to clothe our children and to like have things to use in our
when
home.
You're doing that, you're not spending money on comic books.
I kind of also put my collections on hold, my collecting on hold at that time, and I think he did too for a while. And then, you know, thankfully we're in a much better place now over the last, like, you know, 10 years or whatever.
Yeah, and I know, Brian, I think that's very common. It's not just us. Just about every collector that I've talked to, known, watched on YouTube, follow on Instagram, there's kind of this curve where they're into it. Maybe they start as a kid, and then maybe it's college where they drift away from it, or maybe it's when they get married or something else. For me, I was started in the late 80s, early 90s, mid 90s. I kind of dropped away from it. You know, I was reading X-Men, had Age of Apocalypse, and I'm just throwing things out there. You know, I won't explain everything, but you know, after that, drifted away from it. We got married. Nicole bought me a comic book. I showed it to her the other day. I was like, do you remember this comic book? She's like, no. I'm like, you bought this for me back in 1996.
It was a girlfriend.
Because she knew I liked it. She knew I liked the X-Men. So I still have that. Well, I have that, you know, marked.
I probably had no idea. I probably walked into a comic book store and was like, I want to buy a comic book for my boyfriend. What should I buy? And that's probably what they handed me.
But yeah, and then we were so for those of you who know New Jersey, we were in a mall there called the Freehold Mall. And in the mall, we were walking around one day, and there was a comic book store called Zap Comics, ZAPP. And they're a cool store to check out if you're in the New Jersey area. They have, I think, multiple locations now. But I'm like, holy cow, there's a comic book store in the mall. And so we had to check it out. And that was like 2002, I think. So there's probably like 7 years where I wasn't doing anything. And then 2002, saw that, and I found Transformers the license had been purchased by this now defunct publisher called Dreamwave. And they were just starting in right place, right time, started collecting with that. But yeah, even when we moved to Minnesota, we didn't have a lot. And so I would just try to go and try to piece together some back issues. And it was really just Transformers until about 2014. And 2014 was when I rediscovered the X-Men, and then it grew and grew. And
so Linda Coral. I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong, Linda, but she says she wants to learn to sell on eBay and Etsy, and it's still new. So I wanted to just comment on that. So I sell in both places, and I know Vintage Vinny said he really recommends eBay. I think eBay is great. I do think, and Vinny, you can tell me if you think this is true or not, because I have friends who have tried to start on eBay. It seems like it's hard to like get started and to get traction on eBay, because until you have a seller's rating, like your stuff doesn't get seen as much. And then I also feel like there's more risk involved in eBay. Like, I don't know, people get taken a lot of time, you know, like there's more risk, like scamming on eBay. It seems like my experience on Etsy, my only problems with Etsy are with Etsy, the company. I feel like with Etsy, the store, like as the people, the shoppers, it's a much more personal transaction, and like they're coming to you for something very specific, and I don't know. I feel like there are definitely benefits to both places. I did get hit with my first. So for any of you not familiar, Etsy has started advertising, like, and you don't get a choice. Like they show your stuff. Like, I don't know if it's on Facebook or different websites. And if someone makes a purchase off of one of those ads, you get hit with a big fee. Like I sold an item for $20 and I paid $5 for the advertising. And I didn't get a choice. Like they just did it and someone bought it and then I lost the money. So there is that to think about. But I just think that there's like, there's kind of pros and cons of each place. I feel like on eBay, you just have to be careful with people like buying stuff and then saying it's broken and scamming you, like just don't take returns. Like I've just heard so many horror stories about that. So I just think there's like pros and cons of each. And I think if you're starting out, maybe start both just because and you can cross list, like you can list things on both places, and it just might be easier to start on Etsy and until you get like some traction on eBay. I don't know.
And what's that big requirement on Etsy though, as far as what's allowed to be listed?
Yes, and that's the thing. Etsy, you are limited by the year. So it's like things that are 20 years old or older. Like, so you can't sell anything modern on Etsy, whereas eBay, you can sell anything you want. So I don't know. That's just been my experience. Again, I like eBay enough. I've been on there for almost 20 years. And, it's been fine. I don't do a ton. I've been very part-time. But, just something to think about. I do feel like eBay has gotten more expensive over the time. I feel like sellers, their protections for sellers have kind of diminished over time. I don't know. So I'm still in both places, and I just see benefits of both.
And I've seen people start to sell, at least for things I'm collecting with comic books, more and more on Instagram as well. Yes.
And actually, if you can get an Instagram account going or even a YouTube channel where you're doing live sales, that's almost your best bet, because then you've got no fees and no one's scamming. I mean, people scam you. Like I've had people who bid on stuff and then they never like get in touch with me. But as far as like sending things off, like it's a much more personal, like I know a lot of the people who are buying from me, and it just feels safer as a seller. And I think they probably feel safe as a purchaser because they know me. So I don't know. I do like the live sales, probably the best. I haven't tried an Instagram sale. I don't know if you have, Vintage Vinny. Just I haven't done it just because I don't know. I just haven't had to. I just haven't needed to. But I have seen that's getting really popular too. All right, I just want to read. I want to catch up on the comments. It is so fun. Chris is very fun. Linda says, "It's how fun is it shopping? And are you and Chris both interested in each other's collections?" So I would say it's not that I'm interested in comics, but I get excited for him when he finds things. And he gets excited for me when I find things. And we're always keeping an eye out for each other's collections. So especially when we go to the bins now, Chris knows what I like to find. Yep. So he'll like, when we're, because the bins, for anyone not familiar, the Goodwill outlet bins is just this outlet. And basically things that didn't sell at the store or things they didn't have room for, or people can donate directly to the outlet. And like, there just winds up being giant, like, bins of stuff, and you're digging through it. Basically, it's like the most rummagey kind of rummage sale you could go to. And so now we know, like, he knows what I like to find at the bins, and I know what he's looking for. So it's really fun. It's actually like, and we like to go to garage sales together. Like,
so we'll look for things, and it's not that I know everything she's looking for, but I'm learning from her, and I'll hold things. I'm like, what about this? What about this? Or are you interested in that? And Nicole did come with me to have you come to 2 now?
Shows?
Comic book shows.
Those are funny.
Back pre-COVID when we had comic book shows.
Remember when we had comic book shows and you could go to rooms filled with lots of people in funny costumes?
And be like this close to them, like looking through long boxes like this.
Will that ever happen again? I don't know.
But Nicole came with me to one. It was called Spring Con. So at Minneapolis, we get a good number of comic book shows. And my favorites are the smaller shows that are definitely more focused on the comic books, the creators, local artists, things like that. They're generally cheaper to get into. You can find really good deals on comic books, and you have a chance to meet creators. And believe it or not, you can get signatures from creators and not even have to pay any money for it. They just sign things. Yeah. But in the Twin Cities, there's a group called the Midwest Comic Book Friends. It's MCBF now. It used to be MCBA, but they would put on 2 shows a year. One's called Spring Con, obviously in the spring. One's called Fall Con in the fall. And at the State Fairgrounds in St. Paul, they would do that at a venue there. And Nicole came a couple of years ago, and she had my wish list, and she was looking through long boxes, and she found some things. And there were things that she was like, "Oh, get this!" And there were things that I wasn't even looking for, but she was like, "This looks cool." So okay, all right, I'll buy it. And I had those noted in my my CLZ collector app. That was a comic that Nicole wanted. But one of the things I want to share about the bins is that because someone asked before, did I collect just Marvel comics or other Marvel books? I'm mostly a comic book person, but there are other things that I've started to collect that will just happen upon. Like at the Goodwill bins, Nicole started finding these little guys. These are figures back when Marvel, the last movie Endgame came out. These were, I think these were Happy Meal toys. And there are like 24 of these figures. And the Goodwill bins will charge you by weight. So, I mean, this is...
It's negligible.
Dropping on the keyboard.
Ruin out the computer.
It's almost free. So we started keeping an eye out for these, and I think there's like 3 left that I need.
Yeah.
And then you've got like the big bad guy Thanos. They're just fun things, right? They're not worth anything. They're just fun to have in your...
The agreement we have is that he has to dust his comic book
I have to dust everything.
collectibles down here.
Yeah.
I dust my collections. He dusts his. I think that's a good...
Yeah.
All right, we have some... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say one other... Well, maybe I'll wait for that because it might get into a whole other topic.
We have a question here. Evan Shimko says they moved. Oops, nope, that's not the question though. Here, have you ever bought a full collection? And I love that CGC. I don't know what that means.
CGC, you're talking about the grading company, the one that does the grading.
Okay. So have you ever bought a full collection?
No, but
he wants to.
I hope someday. I've been watching. I like to watch YouTube videos where people do buy collections. Most of the time, they don't tell you how much they paid, but I really would like to learn more about that negotiation process and how much is worth it or not, because that seems to be the challenging piece in terms of sizing up the collection, figure out how much it's worth, how much would you need to pay for it in order to be able to turn a profit at some point. I did read an article a few years ago about a guy who, it was a guy, he bought 2 or 3 different collections over the course of a year, and basically... He came out net zero because what he did was he bought thousands and thousands, kept what he wanted from the collection, sold the rest, and basically earned back his money. So that would be a cool thing to do. Mm-hmm. The risk in buying a collection is that you buy, say it's 1,000 comics, and that's not a big collection, but say you buy 1,000 comics and there's 400 or 500 that you want, maybe, but then there's that other, maybe I'm being generous, but maybe there's all the rest that maybe they're not worth anything. And you see them at little shows time and again where you're stuck with them. And I don't want to be stuck, and I don't have the space to be stuck with hundreds or thousands of comic books
if they're worth nothing, you can donate them.
Yeah, you could donate them or you sell them to somebody. But yeah, I would love to buy a collection. I have a coworker who he likes to garage sale as well. And he's always goading me, trying to say like, did you go and say like, how much for all of them? how much for, I'll buy them all. And he even wants to, he'd even be willing to go in on a collection and buy them and then have me resell them. But we'll see. Yeah, maybe someday.
So Kid Collector says, do you have any ASM issue? I don't know what that means.
ASM is Amazing Spider-Man.
Okay.
And yeah, I've got a bunch of, nothing super old. Amazing Spider-Man was not a title I collected as a young collector. I have some of the first volume, Kid Collector will be familiar with. I did start collecting. I'm trying to put together in the second volume of Amazing Spider-Man, all of the issues with the art by John Romita Jr. And he's, for those who don't know, he's just a very famous, and he has a very distinct style too. I didn't even always like Romita Jr.'s art style, but it's really grown on me over time. So I'm trying to put together his run of ASM Volume 2, and then I have some of the more recent Amazing Spider-Mans. So
my nose is tickling.
That's totally fine.
So one important thing that came in, Clay Rammage. Clay, Chris is going to get all spazzy when I say this, but he says his brother has a collection he wants to sell. They are all from the 60s and 70s, ones he bought new. He's freaking out right now. That's why he's giggling.
Well, that's because that could be amazing stuff. Yeah.
Clay is a reseller. If anyone's interested. You had books. Clay
I can show. Yeah, this is shout out to Clay.
Clay Rammage. Check out his channel.
Yeah, we went to, and you're able to, I don't know if you can do it efficiently, but he can't. But if you could put a link to his channel in there, but or put in the name of his channel if nothing else, and that'll do that. But Nicole and I, was that just last weekend?
Yeah, I think so.
We've seen Clay. I met Clay through Nicole at the Goodwill bins a couple different times, and then we went to visit him. He sells some things through at an antique mart in a town here in the Twin Cities called Hopkins. Was it the Pink Elephant? Mm-hmm. And so we went to visit him, and we saw his his display cases of things he was selling. But it was so cool and unexpected. He had gifts for both of us, and he had found 3 comic books at the Goodwill bins, which is amazing to me, Clay, because I've never seen comic books there. And yeah, so he found 3, and I didn't have any of these. And so we have Classics Illustrated. This is Call of the Wild. This is number 91. This is from I looked at this earlier, 1965. So there's that one. There's a Whitman publisher, Walt Disney. You got Mickey Mouse and Goofy. This is from 1972. That's my birth year. And then there was this Love Diary from 1967, I think this is. The quote on the front says, "I'm not jealous because I don't have a boyfriend and my younger sister Ellie has ... but must my life be all tears, no kisses?" So yeah, these are not my genre of comic book, but they're pretty fun, and love to look at the ads, especially. Here we got like teen tunes and pinups. You got the Beatles and things. That kind of stuff is pretty neat to see. And then there's one here. This is fun. You can see how the marketing was very gender targeted at the time. Here you got beautiful hair pieces. There you go. There's your ads in the Love Diary comic book. But yeah, so thank you, Clay, to those. But was there a
there is a question about your shelves. So my husband likes the shelves you have your long boxes on. Where did you find them?
Okay, so upside downside, yes, these are Target, but I would not recommend these exact shelves. Yeah, you can get these at Home Depot, probably like a Home Depot, Lowe's, Menards type of a place would be the best bet. They're just called like Metro racks is how I've always referred to them. I would not recommend these exact shelves. You can't see it from here. Well, maybe you can on this side. Sorry, it's like working. It's this wire. It's kind of this wired shelving. I don't recommend that. I would recommend something that has a smooth, either wood or some other kind of flat shelving without the holes in it, because it's like a cooling rack for cooking, and it's got the metallic grid going both ways. Pushing them in and pulling them out, it's like it gets caught on it and it shreds up the bottom of the boxes.
You could really put plywood shelving on it if you wanted to.
Yeah, I could put a piece of shelving on top of that.
Because it costs a lot more to get the ones with wood on them. So.
If I were to do it again, I would buy a different type, but these work out well, and they have adjustable height, so I can fit 20 short boxes on each one of these. And a short box holds 150, 175 books. It depends on how you have them stored. But yeah, something like this, very, very good. And I've seen lots of people build stuff, but you don't have to do that if you're not so ambitious. What's this?
Vintage Vinny says, "Ooh, saucy dramatic comic book."
That's right, it was saucy
Vinny,
dramatic.
You collect pinup things, don't you? That's what that ad reminded me of, like old advertising and pinup things. I think I've seen a lot on his channel. So Evan Shimko says, "That's exactly what I do now. I've been doing. I sell it to a person I know by the box for a little more than I paid a box." Do you mean the thing is left over, Evan? Like, is that what you mean? Like you buy a collection and then what's left you sell to someone? I'm just curious to know what exactly you meant.
Nice. Hey, could we shift gears a little bit and show something? Take
gears.
A little pause and show something?
Yes.
I did want to show a couple of recent things that I picked up. One is definitely relatable to our topic of being a couple who collects.
Oh, this is so
This
funny.
is, I'll show this, I'll just show it here. Show here. Love and Collectors, annual number 5. This is a creator published work, and the creator is El Hombre D'Angelini, Eddie D'Angelini. He's out in, I forget where in California, but he's in California. Just recently ran a Kickstarter to be able to self-publish this annual. The story is Eddie D'Angelini. I actually have his information in the description down below, so you can see a link to him, his website, and his Instagram. I first found him online because he published for a few years now a weekly online web comic. So it's like a comic strip, like we'd be familiar with historically, and it's the story of a guy, a girl, and a comic book collection. And his tagline is something like, a guy who loves a girl and a comic book collection, and not always in that order. But here's pictures of Eddie and his wife Kristen there in the back, but it's a web comic. And then what he started doing, this is annual number 5. So each year he pulls together a bunch of those web comic strips and puts them in print. And I didn't make it in time to contribute to his Kickstarter, but now they're orderable for purchase. They're $5.99 and you pay shipping. And right now he's got a deal going where, excuse me, if you order this for $5.99 and he signed it for free, which is super cool too, he will throw in for free a signed copy of Annual #1. So that's a pretty cool little bonus. But what's great about this comic strip is that it really, and I think for a lot of people who are fans, it really reflects reality. So for example, you know, a guy who collects and his wife who does not, I just flipped this open when I got it, and there's this one strip about, you know, Eddie stealing the blankets, but he's having this whole dream, and if Kid Collector's still watching, there's Venom right there. You know, Venom will keep him warm and all these kind of things, and the reality is he's stealing the blankets. And that's a regular conversation.
This is my life. The other morning I woke up and literally every covering on the bed, the sheet, all the blankets were not only like not on me, but they were like, there was feet between me and the nearest blanket. And I was just laying there freezing. I felt like I was camping outside. I was like, and I get really mad, yanking them back to me. And he's like completely oblivious because he's such a heavy sleeper. So I totally, I was like, that is my life. That is very relatable.
Yeah, and kind of his one, I don't know if it's a title page where he uses it, but you see this one image that he puts on a lot of the marketing, and it's a stack of long boxes in the background here, and Kristen is saying to Eddie, you know, Eddie, how many more comics do you need? And his response is, all of them. And I think we both can relate to that as collectors, because there are certain things, whether, you know, vintage Santa, as you mentioned before, for me, X-Men comic books maybe, or Transformers things, there are things, I want all of them, right? You're not done until you've got them all. Right. They're like Pokemon. You got to catch them all.
Can you show the cover again? Kid Collector is asking.
Yeah. It's called Loving Collectors. And again, there's a link to his website down in the description below, and you can find him on Instagram as well. And right now, and I'm not affiliated with him in any way, shape, or form, so I'm just promoting it because I like it. And he's got some of the others. Got to collect them all. His different annuals there, but funny read. Loved this one. Decorating for Christmas. She says, you got to get these comic books out of here because we're going to decorate. He's like, where am I supposed to put them? She's like, I don't know. Just deal with it. And then the bottom panel, of course, is turn the stacked boxes into the Christmas tree. Fantastic.
We will not be doing that. We will not ever.
So,
Okay, so we're over an hour now. So we're probably going to wrap up. Does anyone have any lingering questions? Oh, wait. We're getting some comments here. Remember from a past video that you said you went with your mother to thrift stores? Yes. Oh, yeah. Okay, yes. So as far as when my thrifting started, I'll put this question on the screen. Where did it go? It's a little bit behind here. Well, it's not showing on the StreamYard yet. So Linda, my mom and I used to go to a place called the Jersey Shore Animal Shelter thrift store, and that was my first experience thrifting. And I don't even remember when it started. I think we just always went. And we always would go to garage sales. So like that was just a part of my life. So, and it never ebbed off. Like I got prom dresses from the thrift store. I got, I've always gotten like furniture and decorative things from the thrift store. I don't know. I just think it's more interesting than just going to Target. And again, it's like the thrill of the hunt. Like it's really easy to just go to Target and buy stuff to decorate your living room. And I'm not saying I never buy stuff to decorate my, at like retail places. But it's just more exciting for me, and it makes it more of an adventure to like make a thrifting list and to like, hunt for those things for the season, to know like, okay, I have some things I'm looking for that I want to use to decorate my living room in the fall. And so I have a list and I'm looking all summer for those things. It's just like, I don't know, it just makes it more exciting. So yes, I've always been a thrifter, and I will likely always be a thrifter, even because Kid Collector, I do have more money now. And I still thrift because I just think it's fun. I don't know. It's a good hobby. Okay. Vinny, you're so funny. Okay. Kid Collector wants to know, do you invest in spec books? Now, just tell us real quick, what is a spec book? Yeah. So spec books, you heard me say earlier, if you were here, that the way comic books become key issues is different now than it was pre-internet. Nowadays, you can see a comic book spike in value even before it comes out.
and that'll be largely because there's rumors of a first appearance of a character that's coming, or if it's even if it's a brand new comic or just recently released, it'll be a spec book because it's thought that it's going to increase in value at some point in usually the near or not so distant future, based on, again, in today's culture, a lot of these things, decades ago, like, oh, you read comic books, you're kind of more on the fringe, you're not one of the cool kids. Yeah. But now it's much more mainstream. And so we'll get, look, between Netflix, movies, Hulu, what am I trying to think of? Disney Plus, all these different streaming services. There'll always be rumors of, oh, they're going to take this character and turn it into a TV show or put them in this movie. And so therefore their first appearance will spike in value. I would say, Kid Collector, yes and no. I have learned time and time again that I am a terrible gambler. I am terrible. And there are YouTube channels. You've got, Comic Tom is one. Comic Tom 101 is one that comes to mind. There are plenty of channels that will give their tips on what they think is going to be hot that's coming out, what they think you should buy. So sometimes I'll try, but my gambling abilities are terrible. So usually I don't. And yeah, it's almost like day trading. It's not exactly like it, but there's an art to that, to know what to buy, when to buy it, and then when to sell it, because things will spike in value, but many times they won't maintain that value over a period of months.
So you have to sell it when it's hot.
There's a guy, JPs Budget Collecting, I want to say. You've heard his channel. We listened to him in the car that one time.
Oh, yeah, I like that. I like YouTube channel.
He does a cool series, and I'm sorry I don't have a link to his thing down in the description, but JP will do, these books were like, is it still hot? Like, he'll show what was hot 6 months ago and say, is that still a hot book now, or has it cooled off? Right. So, I would like who is it? Punchline is one of the new DC characters. I didn't get in on her first appearance. I don't know how much that's going for. I got her first cover appearance, that Art Germ cover, but that was all I got. And then
someone wants to know if you have any opinion on Umbrella Academy comic or show.
I haven't read the comic. I've seen the show. I saw the first season of the show.
Sorry, for those of us
unfamiliar. On TV, it's a Netflix series. Okay. And
it's animated?
It's live action. Oh. It's a series of, they're more grown up now, but they were kids. They were all born on the same day. They have special abilities. This one guy basically adopted all of them.
Oh, I remember hearing about this.
And they had different abilities, and he wanted to build a team of extraordinary abilities to fight crime, and basically they all grow up and they're real dysfunctional. Okay. But I enjoyed the TV series. I thought I would enjoy it a little bit more. I really don't have anything negative to say about it, but it was definitely intriguing, and I'm looking forward to season 2. Hopefully that'll come around, but I haven't read the comic, so I can't comment on that one.
And then one last, do you have any thoughts on Venom number 26 being hot when it comes out? Well, you don't do Venom, right?
I don't know.
All right, but that's a speculation.
I guess, like whatever I say, do the opposite.
Okay. All right, you all. I think that this is a good place to wrap up. We got our last questions in. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us. This was fun.
Should I show that or no?
Oh, wait. Chris has one more thing he wants to show.
One more thing to show.
Oh, this is really cool.
This is cool. Again, so this is a non-comic book, but it's comic book related. Of course, we're in the Minneapolis area, after
George Floyd.
The tragic murder of George Floyd. There were riots in the streets, and one of the unfortunate effects of that were a lot of local businesses were destroyed or at least temporarily shut down. And so there's a local artist. His name is Brent Schoonover. I've got his information down below in the description as well. He's done work for Marvel, DC. He would be known for characters Captain Marvel, Batman 66, which was based on the style of the Adam West TV show, and some other things he's done. But he did a piece, and all the proceeds were going to help rebuild those local businesses. And I put some of that link information down there as well. And so I bought one because he wasn't taking any of the money himself, and it's titled, sorry, I'm like a mirror in the thing, Does Whatever a Spider Can. And it shows, because that's what Spider-Man does, right?
The shape of Minnesota.
Yeah, the window breaking in the shape of Minnesota. You got Spider-Man sweeping up. And I thought that was cool. Let me show actually the inspiration piece for this. is actually that.
So that's just a guy in a
that's just a
Spider-Man.
guy in a Spider-Man costume who's actually cleaning up on Lake Street. So that was his inspiration piece, and he did this does whatever a spider can, limited printing. So I thought that was really cool, and it's a great thing that a local artist did. And artists in general tend to be very, very supportive of the communities, local comic shops. This artist was actually just at a local store in the area here called Hot Comics and Collectibles. He had a new book out. What's it called, like Devil's Heritage or something, I think it's called. But he was doing a signing for anybody who bought it. So so they like to support the community. So I like to shout out and support them as well when we can. So,
all right. Thank you again. Thanks. You want to say thank you?
Yeah, thanks everybody for joining. Again, apologies in hindsight if I missed things. Thank you so much to my wonderful wife for
sorry if
monitoring.
we missed any questions. I was trying to.
I am a terrible multitasker, so if I do live things again, hopefully I'll get better or make sure I have company. But yeah, thank you all for being here. Love to be able to chat and get your questions and just share some time with you.
All right. And we will see you the next time. Thanks, Vintage Vinny. Check out Vintage Vinny, Clay Rammage's channels. They are great resellers if you're here as part of the thrifting community. Thanks for showing your support. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.